Hey, what's up? This is Mark Lopes from Metal Church of Ross the Boss Band. Let us pray. And you're listening to Aftershocks TV. And don't forget to keep it fucking metal. Yeah.
All right, welcome, Chris. Good to see you again, man. Dude, it's been a long time since we've done one of these. It's been about 4 months, I think, since we did the last Aftershocks with I think it was that rant we went off on our boy Christian Older Wolvers. I think it was the last one we did, man. So what's going on? How you been, dude?
I'm good, man. I'm glad to be back. I'm glad you're back, man. I've been missing my Aftershocks. I've been getting emails from people saying, "Hey, did that show die? What happened there?" Then there's that group of people. Then there's always the group of people that thinks that I had a fight with. So there's those people are like, "Did you and Matt have a falling out? Do you guys hate each other? What happened?" I'm like, and half the time I say yes. Yeah, I do. I'm like, yeah, absolutely. Matt's a dick, and got rid of him.
I know. I got some emails too. People are just like, dude, what the, because I guess maybe because they were used to when we started this shit, we were doing like 4 interviews a fucking week, and then this is like boom, gone. But but no, yeah, obviously, like I said, I don't know if everyone else out there knows. I don't think I talked about it on any of the episodes, but I am doing a film called Lifers. There's a trailer out there now. People want to check it out on YouTube. Lifers, Lifers. And you can check it out. I don't really feel like explaining it here. Like I said, I'll get into it.
How about if I make it super easy for you?
You go ahead and do it.
At the end of each of these episodes, why don't you just tag it on the end like an ad? The trailer.
Yeah, I guess that's what I'll have to do, right?
There you go. Yeah. And then they can see what it's all about.
Good idea. I like that. So just 2 extra minutes of shit they gotta deal with. They deal with enough shit on the show. So what's an extra 2 fucking minutes, right? Yeah.
That's right.
But yeah, so Lifers, so we're doing that, man. We're almost done with it. Me and Tanner Poppet, Poppet's Corner, CMS Network.
Right.
Compadre. Yeah, so we're doing a film together. And yes, I will tag that on the end of this if people want to check out the trailer. And anyway, so we're getting close to getting that done. So yeah, but it's great to be back, man. I really want to do at least one of these a month or so, maybe 1 or 2 of these a month until we lead up to that. And then once obviously that's out, then Aftershocks will be back full time. So just a hiatus if everyone's curious out there. But yeah, man. So obviously, man, there's always tons of shit going on. But one of the big things that I'm really glad about, and I know you are too, is the classic lineup of Biohazard, as everyone knows, reunited this year. They've done a tour. They've been playing festivals and shows throughout the world. I know they're doing a tour coming up with Life Agony in Europe,
right,
in the UK. But they're actually back they're coming back with a full record, a new album, man, which, I mean, it's one thing doing some shows and the festivals to kind of do a reunion thing, but the fact that they're putting out new music, man, I'm really happy about that, dude. It's going to be now the interesting thing is how it's going to be released. So they got signed to a label, Black to Black, which is a new sister label of Frontiers, man. So that's just kind of like, got, a bunch of people sort of really surprised. Frontiers, the label that's known for their melodic metal and symphonic metal and classic metal actually has a 90s metal, hardcore, rap metal band, back in the fold here. It's interesting too, because I know you've done done some work via Frontiers, and you, I know, working alongside with Johnny G. Welly, who was, I think you said he was sort of the US rep, right?
He was, yeah.
Frontiers. So I guess I know you were saying they wanted, looking for him to get some bands on the roster. Was this anything in this vein that they were kind of looking for? Do you know of? I mean,
not that I was ever told. I mean, I never heard that. Look. And again, I don't know anything. Let me be clear before I say anything. I'm not associated with Frontiers now, so I don't have a real insider track on it. I see this and I think 2 things. One, I think it's great for Biohazard because they don't have to live up to anything, which I mean, I think really gives them, not that they would ever go into anything with a box and say, okay, we're going to work inside the box. That's not how they work anyway. But they don't have, with no other bands on this imprint, they have nothing to live up to. You know, they can do their own thing. They can do whatever they want to do, and nobody's going to say boo to them. So I think that's great for them. I think Serafino, who's the owner of Frontiers and the Frontiers, you know, the Frontiers crew, might have known that they were having some trouble. You know, I mean, I don't know. You get the same press release as I do. Anymore, when you get something coming out of Frontiers, it's a who?
Oh,
you know, you're not getting a whole lot of. It seems like all of those 80s metal guys have either stopped recording stuff or jumped ship or, you know, a lot of them went over to Silver Lining and, you know, they're not on Frontiers anymore. And Frontiers, so now Frontiers is releasing a bunch of, here's the band that was finished third on Brazilian American Idol. And, you know, it's all kinds of bands you've never heard of. And some of them are good and some of them are not. But I think they quickly went from being the place for 80s bands particularly to having nothing going on. And they're trying to reinvent themselves a little bit, and they're trying to do it not with the 80s, which I think they even realize that they've kind of, you know, squeezed that lemon as dry as they could.
Oh yeah.
So they're moving on to the, you know, to the 90s. And I think Biohazard might be the first. And I think this imprint, I don't know. I doubt it's going to be a hardcore imprint just because I know all those people in that office, and that is not what those guys are listening to. But I wonder if this isn't kind of the 90s imprint of what Frontiers has always been, which is a 70s/80s bands. You know, so they'll keep Frontiers and they'll release Journey or Blue Oyster Cult or Night Ranger or what have you. But then on Black to Black, it'll be Biohazard, and there might be, I don't know, Candlebox or Sponge or, you know, those types of that era of bands, you know.
Well, yeah, I mean, for a label that's obviously made a name for itself in a living, being sort of that, you know, like you said, looking, you know, taking some old musicians or bands, you know, from, like you said, like you said, they did it for years with the 80s. 80s guys, as we know, right, they're either kind of retiring, just can't do it anymore, or so forth. So you're right. I mean, they need a new business model. And like you said, they've squeezed this thing dry with the 80s artists. You know, and that's the thing, right? They can't tour as much. I mean, these guys are getting well into their 60s now, if not older, you know, 70s even. Exactly. So you're right. I think you're right, because they did say that Biohazard in the press release is the flagship artist of this Black to Black label. So, I mean, it's interesting because they said in there that they're dedicated to pushing the boundaries of heavy music. Well, I mean, I'm sorry, but Biohazard's like, you know, close to 40 years old, for God's sakes, dude. I mean, they've been pushing boundaries years ago, but I think you're right. I think this is probably the start of them doing the same thing they did with Frontiers on Black to Black, except looking at the 90s bands. And it makes sense, I mean, right? Because there's plenty of those. They're just going to use, I think, the same formula that they did with the 80s bands and now use with the 90s. You're right. I believe so.
And it's too hard when you've established yourself as one thing to do another thing. I'll point I'll point both fingers at Earache. Earache when we were coming up, 80s, 90s, that was all death metal. Death metal. Yep,
absolutely.
And now it's like Dirty Honey knockoffs.
They got, you know, Rival Sons is on.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's a totally different brand.
It is.
And it hasn't worked. I mean, Rival Sons has worked because that band is blown up, but if you ask most people what label they're on, they don't know.
Don't even know. I know.
Yeah, and certainly saying Earache, no. You know, I'm thinking Brutal Truth when you tell me Earache. Totally. I'm not thinking Rival Sons.
Absolutely. Yep.
You know, so it makes sense.
And those kind of bands. Yeah.
Yeah. So it makes sense for them to create a different imprint. They've got a formula that works. Now they just apply that formula to a subsidiary, so to speak.
Well, and I think it's good. You know, I know like Nuclear Blast, they've, you know, over the last, you know, handful of years, you know, labels like that and like Napalm, right? They were usually the ones that are putting out these type of bands, the ones that are reforming.
Yeah,
and getting back
AFM,
together.
a few of those.
Yeah. Like I know Downset, for instance, you know, I'm just thinking of Biohazard, something in the same realm. Downset, they were, you know, on Nuclear Blast, like it was about a year or two ago.
Sure.
I mean, it didn't do anything. It really wasn't good. But if you look at a band like that, I mean, I think, for instance, a label like Nuclear Blast, I mean, they don't need to sign those kind of bands. Nuclear Blast, yes, they have all the legendary bands, but they're also the up and coming label too. I mean, they're just the biggest metal label on the planet, I believe. So I think it's smart even for bands like a Biohazard, where you're not gonna. I think a label like Nuclear Blast is too big for a band like Biohazard. I think something like this fits them perfectly.
Sure.
And it's interesting too, because here's a band. I mean, this is the first now also album they're putting out with this lineup since '94. The last one they had all four of these guys was State of the World Address. So you're talking about 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And so what's interesting is in my opinion, really, they had the album after State of the World Address, Madaleo. That to me is their last really good album. And even that was kind of like you could see they were starting to lose a little bit on that
You didn't
record.
like Kill or Be Killed?
Yeah, man. Listen, the Uncivilization literally is.
I like that too.
You did? I
love it.
I think it's unlistenable, man. I ain't gonna
Really?
lie. I put it on to it a handful of years, about 2 or 3 years ago. Like, I got to give this another chance. It's been a long time since I've listened to it. I still had to turn it off. It was that bad. And listen, I'm a monstrous Biohazard fan, but I really haven't been impressed with anything, since. It's just, again, they didn't have Bobby Hamble in the band. I think, it's like anything, right? It's like a band like a Faith No More. It's all about the sum of all its parts. If you take away one of those guys, it's just not the same. And they basically admitted to that, once he left, the band wasn't the same. They didn't work as hard. Evan obviously lost sort of interest. He was more into the porn stuff and doing, his other
Oz.
So he did Oz. He did that Attica 7, which was terrible.
That was bad.
It was really bad. Well, dude, I mean, the last thing he put out a handful of years ago was something he did with his wife or something. It was like the shitty, like beat driven hip hop. It was absolutely awful.
I do remember this, and it was god awful. I do remember that. Yeah.
Man. So it's going to be interesting that okay, they reformed. Like I told you, I saw them live in May. They were fucking great. But can they really put together a new album that's going to hold up for what people expect? I mean, it's going to be interesting to see.
I think they can. I think and I'm with you. Most of the time, these reunions blow. They do. They normally blow.
Mm-hmm.
I have a lot of hope for this one for two reasons. Number one, they're taking a long time. They didn't just get together and throw together a record.
True.
They put themselves out there. They got reacquainted. They got the vibe of Biohazard back first by playing, basically a year's worth of shows before they recorded the record, or before they probably even put the ideas together. So that gives me a lot of hope. And the other thing that gives me a lot of hope is that the Billy Bio records were good. They're not great.
Not great, but they're decent enough, yeah.
They're quality enough to, if you took just those same records and put these other guys in them to add their taste, I think they would have been great. Which makes me think there's something there. There's definitely something that can work there. So I'm excited about it. I'm definitely in the I can't wait to hear it camp.
Oh yeah. Well, it's interesting. I was just saying, I felt, like I said, Monteleo in '96 was their last really good record. And I think people don't talk about this that much, but a lot of those earlier '90 bands like Biohazard, you got bands like Biohazard, Prong, Fear Factory, just like the '80s bands. Okay, when their time was sort of, if you want to call it up, or their sound, and they had to then sort of adjust to what was going on at that time, they struggled. I mean, all those bands, Prong was the same thing. I mean, those early '90s sort of groove metal bands, they in the late '90s, early 2000s, right? I mean, that stuff was now out. So like any other, groundbreaking sort of sound, when that sound was done, there was something new, and these bands wanted to stay relevant. They had to sort of adjust to what was going on at the time, which was, like I said, more of the new metal, stuff. I mean, it was really more new metal. And Biohazard definitely went full in on new metal, but I just don't think they really did it good. And it was just sounding the same like everything else. I mean, there's only so much you could do with new metal, right? I mean, everything sounded the same. Once you had the 2001 or so with Linkin Park. After that, everything was just the same.
Yeah.
And so I think like then they found themselves sort of in no man's land. Like, what do we do? And then the 2000s when the labels all went down and everything was just a disaster. It was like they were just, putting out stuff, like you said, rushing it, not inspired, and just doing it to tour and make a living. And I think subsequently that really is what just led to the demise of most of these bands. They just were lost. Of course, then Biohazard did the whole thing with Scott Roberts. I remember you did that interview with him a handful of years ago with his other band, The Take, and that didn't pan out. I mean, to me, you can't have Biohazard without Evan anyway, with his vocals. I'm sorry,
no, I agree.
But a lot of people won't talk about that. Those early '90s bands, they struggle. Even look at like Diamond and Vinny with the Damage Plan, which wasn't good. So it's like they all were struggling to find their sound in the early 2000s, and that just led to the demise. So I'm just hoping we hear some sort of, like I said, some sort of sound that's similar to what they were known for back in the early 90s.
Well, the one thing I hope that they don't do is what they did when they tried, the one time when they tried to reform this lineup. Remember that, it was 2010, 11, 12, whatever it was, that Reborn in Defiance. That was garbage.
Yeah, it was.
And I blame them, but I also blame them for working with Toby Wright on that, which
not the right fit for them.
Why do you bring in the guy that did Mushroom Head to do a Biohazard record? That was just stupid. But I hope that they don't try to do that. I hope they try to reinvent State of the World Address, or the self-titled, or Urban Discipline. Give me those. Give me even Modeleo. I'd be fine with that. If it sounds like that, I would be fine.
Oh,
with that.
yes, absolutely.
But anything past that, no. If it sounds like any of the other stuff where they were, honestly, where they just weren't a band anymore, they were all off in different directions, it felt like, and they were just coming together because it was time to make money. I'll pass. But yeah, I'm with you though. I'm very excited about the prospect of this being good, and they all look like they're in shape.
Oh yeah,
they all look like they're ready to do it. From the video, I've only seen videos. You've seen it live, but the videos have all looked killer. So I'm excited.
And they look like they're having fun up there. That's the thing too. They were just in great spirits, and it's fun. I think it's just they never thought they'd get back. The reason, we interviewed Billy. He was the one that told us. Remember that he dropped the hint that they were talking again. This is about 3 years ago. I think we talked to him, and it was because of their late manager, Scott Cohen, who passed. They all kind of met up there, and it was like, let's do something. So it's great. It's great to see. Like I said, I am interested really to see what this label, this Black to Black from Frontiers, where they go after this, because we could definitely use a label out there that is bringing back those 90s bands. You know what I mean?
Let's just hope that they don't use one piece of the formula that they've been using, which is having the same guys write every goddamn record.
Yeah.
Let's hope they make the bands. And I don't even say I say make the bands write their own music. Alessandro is a friend. Like I consider him to be a friend, Alessandro Davecchio. And as a friend, I wish he wasn't writing, and now he's not. But
he's not,
he's not. Now another friend, Giancarlo Floridia, is kind of the replacement guy.
Okay,
another guy that's been a veteran of Aftershocks. So I know all those players, and I get why they did that with those bands, because they were kind of constructing a lot of them. So it's just easier to say, here's 10 songs, go.
Sure.
But I don't want that with the 90s bands. The one thing that's different, the reason you could get away with that with the 80s bands is because 80s music all sounded basically the same.
Yeah.
I mean, is there really that much difference between Poison all the way down to, I don't know, Kick Tracy? I don't think there is.
No.
There's a definite difference between Biohazard and Candlebox, or
yes,
Papa Roach, or Disturbed, or whoever you want to name. They all have a different sound, so I hope they don't try to wedge one writer like they do. I hope that's one piece of the.
Well, I mean, how can you really write for like a Biohazard? How can you have someone else write that? I mean, it would be. I like you said, I mean, I think between Alessandro having to, no longer be a part of it, and I did see that he's, I think, doing well, right? Is he cancer free now or something, right?
Yeah,
I think
he's healthy again.
Yeah.
I believe so. That's
which is good to see. Yeah, but I mean, yeah, like you said, it's just I believe in a good formula for a label, but and of course, when Frontiers started, I mean, that was because nobody would sign those '80s bands. No one wanted anything to do with them, so they really were. It was really brilliant to jump on that, and then all of a sudden later on, when this became had a nostalgic rebirth, all those bands, who was at the front lines to take full advantage of that was Frontiers. And we've talked. How many times have we talked about, dude? I mean, the '90s thing is coming now. The '80s is done, '90s is in, and it's full on in now. And so I mean, and we're gonna get into another band here in a little bit, another '90s band who's gotten back together, first time they played in decades. So smart move by them. I just hope that they continue signing bands like this, the Life Agonies or whoever it is, those early '90s bands, because I think we all want to see our old bands that we love back together and just giving us a little more piece of nostalgia that we could chew on for a bit,
I gotta ask though, do you really want to see Life of Agony again?
Well, no, not them. You know what I'm getting at.
I know, but I mean, them personally, and I love them. I love them, but there's so much outside stuff now, especially with the Keith Mina stuff, that I don't care how good of a record they could possibly record. Yeah, you ain't getting past it.
No, you're not, dude. Well, the thing is, that they have been active. They're not like a band that's they've been active for a while. They put out a couple
nobody
albums.
Cares.
And that's, yes, exactly. No one really was talking about or caring about it much, except for their core audience or their core geographic locations where they still do well.
I had an interest in music always.
It's always kind of been around me some way, shape, or form.
5 minutes sitting on a drum set, man, change your life.
This is the same black guitar that Marty McFly plays in Back to the Future.
I love the feeling I get in front of the freaking full stack here, just the vibration or something to it.
I'm lucky because I do have a little bit of a tap into the Fu Manchu lore, into the Nebula lore.
In order to keep things going, you kind of have to start playing the game a little bit, like the business game.
Everybody has to get through a day-to-day, and how do you exist and how do you get by?
As far as getting people to commit to bands, it's tough to keep a lot together these days, for sure.
Still sleeping on people's floor, that's still a reality.
Probably also playing with some of the best people I've ever played with. The creative juices don't stop. It just keeps going.
For me, it's just finding a balance of how much time I'm spending with my family versus how much time I'm spending working.
It's this validation that what you're doing actually has merit.
Obviously, we're a little long in the tooth, and we've been doing this for a minute, and now we can kind of do what we want. We don't need a record company. I'll do it myself. I'll do it the way I want to.
Just always be cool. Just be respectful. Those are your people. They're connecting to you on some level, even if they don't look like you.
It's got to happen, or else I'll go crazy. Go crazy one way or another, I might as well, not go crazy if I can play music.
Maybe one day I'll have a Porsche, but until that day, I'll drive a Chevy.
There you go.
All right.